The silver corridors of Station Covenant 7 stretched endlessly in all directions. Do-hyun Park walked slowly through the diplomatic quarter, his footsteps echoing softly against the metal floor. Beside him, a golden retriever walked with perfect patience, his tail wagging gently. The dog's name was Baram, and he had been Do-hyun's companion for 5 years. Do-hyun was a human ambassador, one of the first sent to represent Earth among the stars. He was 42 years old, with dark hair beginning to show gray at the temples. His face usually carried a calm expression, the result of years of careful diplomatic training. He wore simple dark clothes, nothing fancy, because he believed actions spoke louder than appearance. The station was home to dozens of alien species. They came from all corners of the galaxy, each one different from the last. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others slithered, floated or moved in ways that seemed impossible. The air recyclers worked constantly to blend different atmospheric preferences, creating a strange mix of scents that Do-hyun had grown used to over the months. As Do-hyun and Baram passed through the main plaza, other beings stopped to stare. Some watched with curiosity, tilting their heads or extending sensory organs. Others looked with clear disgust. The idea of keeping an animal as a companion was strange to most species. Some found it primitive. Others found it wasteful. A few found it disturbing. Baram paid no attention to the stares. He had learned to ignore them months ago. His attention stayed focused on Do-hyun, occasionally glancing up to check on his human. When Do-hyun smiled down at him, Baram's tail wagged faster. They reached the council hall, a massive dome where representatives from across the galaxy met to discuss trade, territory, and peace. Do-hyun had a meeting today about mineral rights in a disputed system. It would be long and probably boring, full of careful words and hidden meanings. Before entering, Do-hyun knelt beside Baram. He scratched behind the dog's ears, speaking softly in Korean. Baram leaned into the touch, his eyes half closed with contentment. To anyone watching, it might have seemed like a simple moment. But to Do-hyun, these quiet seconds with his dog were what kept him sane in the cold politics of space. A harsh voice interrupted the moment. Commander Velcros of the Vryn Empire approached, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been contempt. The Vryn were tall, covered in dark scales, with eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They were known across the galaxy as warriors and strategists, respected for their military power and feared for their ruthlessness. Velcro stopped a few feet away, looking down at Do-hyun and Baram, his lip curled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The ambassador does his beast tricks before the important work begins. How fitting for your species. Do-hyun stood slowly, keeping his face neutral. He had dealt with Velcros before. The commander enjoyed making cutting remarks about humans, testing to see if he could provoke a reaction. Do-hyun never gave him the satisfaction. Baram is a certified support animal, Commander. His presence helps me maintain focus during long negotiations. Velcro snorted, a sound like steam escaping from a valve. Support. Your species is weak, needing comfort from lesser creatures. This is why you will never be taken seriously among the stars. You bring pets to diplomatic sessions. You display emotion freely. You lack the discipline required for true power. Do-hyun felt Baram press against his leg, sensing tension. The dog was trained to detect stress in his human. Do-hyun reached down, resting his hand on Baram's head. The simple contact helped him stay calm. Baram has better manners than many delegates I've met, Commander. Perhaps that's what concerns you. For a moment, something dangerous flashed in Velcros's eyes. Then he turned and walked away, his tail snapping sharply behind him. Do-hyun watched him go, a small knot of worry forming in his stomach. He had made an enemy today, he realized. But he couldn't bring himself to regret it. No one insulted Baram without response. The negotiation session lasted 6 hours. Do-hyun sat at the long table with representatives from 18 different species, all arguing about who had the right to mine asteroids in the Kepler system. The discussion went in circles, with each species claiming historical precedent or military strength or economic need. Do-hyun spoke little, following his usual strategy. He listened carefully, took notes, and only offered opinions when asked directly. The other ambassadors had learned that humans were good at finding compromises, at seeing solutions that satisfied multiple parties. It wasn't flashy work, but it was effective. While Do-hyun worked, Baram waited in the ambassador's quarters. Do-hyun's assistant, Min-jae, stayed with the dog. Min-jae was young, only 25, eager to learn diplomacy. He sat on the floor playing with Baram, throwing a soft toy across the room and laughing when the dog brought it back. 3 hours into the session, Min-jae received an urgent message. Earth needed to speak with him immediately about a family emergency. His mother was ill. Min-jae looked at Baram, hesitating. The dog lay on his bed, peaceful and content. The quarters were secure, locked from the inside. It would only take 15 minutes to make the call from the communications center. Min-jae made his decision. He filled Baram's water bowl, gave him a treat, and scratched his head. "Be good, boy. I'll be right back." Baram's tail wagged. He understood the tone, if not the words. Min-jae locked the door carefully behind him and hurried toward the communication center. The quarters were silent for 10 minutes. Baram dozed on his bed, dreaming of running through grass on Earth, chasing birds that always stayed just out of reach. Then came a sound at the door. Not the electronic beep of a keycard. Something else. Metal scraping against metal, a lock being forced. Baram lifted his head, ears perked forward. The door slid open. 3 figures entered, moving quickly and deliberately. They were Vryn, all wearing military uniforms. Baram stood, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew these intruders didn't belong in his human space. One of the Vryn held out a device. A high-pitched sound filled the room, too high for most species to hear but painful to canine ears. Baram yelped, stumbling backward. Before he could recover, rough hands grabbed him. He struggled, trying to bark, trying to bite, but they were too strong. Something was forced over his muzzle, preventing him from making sound. Commander Velcross entered the quarters last. He looked around the space with cold satisfaction. The human keeps it so tidy, so organized. Such pride in these small comforts. He walked over to where his soldiers held Baram. The dog struggled against their grip, eyes wide with fear. Velcross reached out one clawed hand, gripping Baram's collar. This will teach the ambassador about displaying arrogance, about forgetting his place. They left as quickly as they came, carrying Baram between them. The dog fought the entire time, but it made no difference. Behind them, they left an open door, scattered belongings, and on the floor near Baram's bed, a small pool of blood where a claw had cut too deep. When Min-jae returned 20 minutes later, he found the destruction immediately. His face went pale. He searched the quarters frantically, calling Baram's name, hoping desperately that the dog was hiding somewhere. But Baram was gone. The only evidence of his presence was the blood on the floor and a few golden hairs on the disrupted bed. Min-jae ran to the council hall, his heart pounding. He burst through the doors, interrupting the session. All conversation stopped. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward him. Ambassador Park, Min-jae's voice shook. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's Baram, he's gone. Someone took him." Do-hyun went very still. His face, normally so controlled, became completely blank. He stood slowly from his seat. The other ambassadors watched him with confusion. What was a human doing? Why did he look like that? They didn't understand the change they were seeing. They didn't know that beneath Do-hyun's calm surface, something fundamental had just broken. "Excuse me." Do-hyun's voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent chamber. "Something has happened. I need to leave." He walked toward the exit, each step measured and controlled. But those who knew humans, who had learned to read their expressions, saw the truth. Ambassador Park was holding himself together by pure will alone. As he passed through the doors, Ambassador Terry Song of the Terran Trade Council caught his arm. She was older than Do-hyun, with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen decades of negotiation. She took one look at his face and knew. "What do you need? Find Captain Lee." Do-hyun's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "Tell him to ready his ship. We may need it." Terry nodded once, understanding immediately. She pulled out her communication device as Do-hyun walked away. Behind them, the council hall erupted in confused chatter. No one understood why a session had been interrupted over a missing animal. They were about to learn a lesson about humanity that would echo across the galaxy. They were about to learn what happened when you hurt something a human loved. Do-hyun stood in his quarters, staring at the blood on the floor. It was a small amount, barely enough to fill a teaspoon, but to him it might as well have been an ocean. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Min-jae stood near the door, his face wet with tears. The young man kept apologizing, his voice breaking with each word. It's not your fault. Do-hyun's voice was flat, empty of emotion. He couldn't let himself feel anything yet. If he started, he didn't know if he could stop. Someone planned this. They waited for you to leave. Station security arrived within minutes of being called. The officer in charge was a Trellin, an insectoid species with 4 arms and compound eyes. He looked around the quarters with what might have been disinterest. So an animal is missing. Perhaps it escaped. Do-hyun turned slowly to face the officer. He didn't escape. The door was locked. Someone broke in and took him. There's blood on the floor. I want a full investigation. The Trellin made a clicking sound that translated through the universal communicator as mild annoyance. Ambassador, we have limited resources. A lost pet is not a priority. Perhaps check with the station's animal control services. This is theft and assault. Do-hyun's voice grew harder. I am a diplomatic representative. My quarters were illegally entered. That alone should warrant investigation. The officer considered this for a moment, then nodded reluctantly. Very well. We will review security footage, but I cannot promise quick results. Many incidents occur on this station daily. After the security team left, Do-hyun sat on his bed. He picked up one of Baram's toys, a worn rope that they used for tug-of-war games. The rope still smelled like his dog. Do-hyun closed his eyes, fighting back the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Baram had been there through everything. Through the difficult years of diplomatic training. Through the loneliness of being light years from home. Through nights when the weight of representing all humanity felt too heavy to bear. And now he was gone. A knock at the door brought him back to the present. Ambassador Song entered, followed by a tall woman with sharp features. This is Nari Kim. She works for Terran Security Services. I thought she might help. Nari walked through the quarters, her eyes missing nothing. She knelt beside the blood, pulled out a small scanner and took samples. Then she moved to the door, examining the lock mechanism. They overrode the security code. Sophisticated work. Military-grade equipment, can you find him? Do-hyun asked. I can try. Give me a few hours. Nari pulled out a data pad and began working, her fingers moving rapidly across the screen. While Nari worked, Ambassador Song sat beside Do-hyun. The station security won't help, she said quietly. The council sees this as minor. An animal isn't important to most species, he's not just an animal. Do-hyun's voice cracked slightly. He's family, I know. Song put a hand on his shoulder. That's why I called Captain Lee. His ship is ready if we need it. And Do-hyun, you need to know something. Word is already spreading back to Earth. People are angry. Very angry. 3 hours later, Nari had results. She gathered everyone in Do-hyun's quarters and displayed her findings on a holographic screen. I accessed the station's surveillance system. The official footage has been deleted, but I found backup files. Watch. The hologram showed the corridor outside Do-hyun's quarters. 3 Vrin soldiers approached the door. One attached a device to the lock panel. The door slid open. They entered. 14 minutes later, they emerged carrying something wrapped in dark fabric. But for just a moment, a golden tail was visible, struggling against the wrapping. Do-hyun's face went pale. Who are they? Nari enhanced the image, zooming in on insignia visible on their uniforms. Commander Velkros's personal guard. She pulled up more files. 6 hours after they took Baram, Velkros left the station on a military transport. Destination, Kalros Prime, the Vrin homeworld. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Baram wasn't just lost. He had been kidnapped deliberately, taken to a world where humans had no authority, no jurisdiction, no power to demand his return. Do-hyun stood, his face becoming a mask of cold determination. I'm filing formal charges with the council. I want Velkros arrested. I want my dog returned. Ambassador Song looked doubtful. The council won't move against a Vrin commander over this. The Vrin have too much military influence. They'll claim diplomatic immunity or deny everything. Then I'll go to Kalros Prime myself. That's restricted space. If you enter without permission, it's an act of aggression. It could start a war. Do-hyun looked at Ambassador Song, and she saw something in his eyes that made her understand why humans had survived and thrived despite being the newest species in space. I don't care about politics right now. I don't care about consequences. They took my dog. They hurt him. And I'm getting him back. Ambassador Song studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but you're not going alone. And we do this smart. She activated her communicator. Captain Lee, are you there? A voice responded immediately, crisp and professional. Standing by, Ambassador. Prepare the Indomitable for departure. Full combat readiness. We have a rescue mission, understood? Lee's voice held no surprise, no hesitation. What are we rescuing? A dog. Ambassador Park's dog. There was a pause, then a sound that might have been a grim laugh. They really don't understand us, do they? We'll be ready in 2 hours. The formal complaint to the council went exactly as Ambassador Song predicted. The human delegation presented evidence, showed footage, demanded action. The council listened politely, then dismissed it as an internal matter between species. The Vrin delegation claimed no knowledge of any animal. They suggested that Ambassador Park was emotionally unstable, grasping at conspiracy theories to explain a simple case of a pet wandering away. Do-hyun sat through the entire session without speaking. His face remained calm, but those who knew him saw the fury barely contained beneath the surface. When the council formally declined to take action, he stood and walked out without a word. On Earth, the news had spread. Social media exploded with outrage. Videos of people with their own dogs went viral, along with the message, "Bring Baram home." Politicians faced enormous pressure. The public demanded action. How could Earth's government stand by while one of their diplomats had his companion stolen? The Terran Coalition Navy received unofficial orders. Provide support if requested, but maintain deniability. If things went wrong, the mission never had official approval. Captain Dae-hyun Lee understood perfectly. He was being given permission to start a war while being told it was entirely his responsibility. He smiled grimly and began preparing his ship. The TCS Indomitable was a destroyer-class vessel. Small compared to the massive warships of older species, but fast and deadly. Her crew of 85 humans represented the best the Terran Navy had to offer. When Captain Lee briefed them on the mission, he expected questions, maybe even protests. This wasn't a sanctioned military operation. They would be entering hostile space without authorization. Instead, his executive officer, Commander Yoon Ji-kwon, simply asked one question. Is the dog still alive? Intelligence suggests yes. They took him for a reason. Lee paused. They wanted to study human emotional attachment. Apparently, it's a research project. The bridge crew went silent. Then one by one they began speaking. I'm in. My family has always had dogs. I'm in. My daughter has a golden retriever. They look like brothers. I'm in. Every single crew member volunteered. Not one person asked to be left behind. Captain Lee felt a surge of pride in his species. Other races might not understand. They might think humans were crazy risking so much for one animal. But that was exactly what made humans dangerous when provoked. They didn't abandon family. Do-hyun boarded the Indomitable with a small bag of personal items. He had resigned his diplomatic post officially, though Ambassador Song assured him it was temporary. As he walked through the ship's corridors, crew members nodded to him with respect. Many had tears in their eyes. They understood what this meant to him. Captain Lee met him in the ready room. Ambassador Park, Do-hyun, if I may. We're going to get your dog back. But I need you to understand something. This might get violent. People might die. Are you prepared for that? Do-hyun met his eyes without flinching. Baram is innocent. He never hurt anyone. They took him to hurt me to prove humans are weak. Whatever it takes to get him back, I'm ready. Captain Lee nodded. Then we understand each other. He activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are going hunting. Our mission is simple. Retrieve one golden retriever named Baram from Vrin space. Some people will think we're crazy. Some will say it's not worth it. But we know better. We don't leave family behind. Prepare for departure. The Indomitable powered up, her engines glowing bright blue. Other ships began appearing near the station. Private vessels, corporate security craft, even a few old military ships that had been in storage. Their captains sent simple messages. We stand with Ambassador Park. We stand with humanity. The council watched in disbelief as the human fleet assembled. Over the threat assessment network, alien ambassadors discussed what they were witnessing. They're really doing this. Over an animal. This proves their instability. Or it proves something else entirely. As the Indomitable entered faster than light travel, heading toward Vrin space, Do-hyun sat alone in his guest quarters. He held Barham's rope toy, the one thing he had brought from his station quarters. His hands shook slightly as emotions he had been suppressing finally broke through. "Hold on, boy. I'm coming. Just hold on." The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Calros system. Stars glittered in the darkness beyond the view screen. Somewhere ahead, on the third planet orbiting a yellow sun, Barham waited. Do-hyun stood on the bridge staring at the distant world. His hands gripped the railing so tightly his knuckles turned white. Almost immediately, the communication system crackled to life. "Terran vessel, this is Calros Defense Command. You are in restricted space. State your purpose immediately, or you will be fired upon." Captain Lee looked at Do-hyun, silently asking permission. Do-hyun stepped forward, his voice steady despite the anger burning inside him. "This is Ambassador Do-hyun Park of Earth. I am here to retrieve property stolen from me by Commander Velcros. Return my companion immediately and we will leave in peace." There was a pause, then laughter came through the speakers. "You traveled all this way for an animal? Your species truly has lost all sense. Leave now or face the consequences." Do-hyun's face hardened. "We're not leaving without him." On the view screen, 3 massive Vryn warships appeared, moving to intercept. They were each twice the size of the Indomitable, their hulls covered in weapon systems. The threat was clear. Commander Kwan looked at the tactical display and spoke quietly. "Captain, we're severely outgunned." Captain Lee smiled grimly. "Then we'll need to be smarter. Ready all weapons, prepare evasive maneuvers, and get me our intelligence on that research facility." Back on Station Covenant 7, the Galactic Council had convened an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species argued loudly, their voices creating chaos in the chamber. "The humans have gone mad. They will start a war over nothing. They must be stopped." But something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. Other ships were moving toward Calros system. Human ships, private vessels that had never been meant for combat, suddenly appeared at the system's edge, standing ready. A corporate transport, a mining ship, even an old patrol boat that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. One by one, they sent messages to the Vryn Defense Fleet. "We stand with Ambassador Park. We stand with Earth. Touch our people and you face all of us." The Vryn commander couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You would risk war over a single beast? This is insanity," Commander Kwan responded, her voice cold and clear. "You clearly don't understand humans. We bond with those we love. Dogs, cats, any creature that shows us loyalty and affection. And when someone hurts them, they hurt all of us. Return the dog and this ends peacefully." The standoff continued for hours. Neither side would back down. The Vryn couldn't understand why humans would risk so much. The humans couldn't understand why the Vryn didn't simply return what they had stolen. During the standoff, Nari worked frantically in the Indomitable's intelligence center. She had made contact with Terran operatives on Calros Prime, people who had been gathering information for years. Finally, she found what she needed. She rushed to the bridge with a data pad. "Captain Ambassador, I found him." Nari displayed a map on the main screen. "Barham is being held at the Calros Military Research Facility, Sector 7. It's a psychological research center. They've been studying him, running tests on stress responses and emotional reactions. Is he hurt?" Do-hyun's voice was barely a whisper. Nari hesitated, then decided honesty was better. "Yes, the tests have been stressful. He's frightened, underfed, but he's alive. They want to understand why humans form these bonds, so they're keeping him alive to study the attachment." Something broke in Do-hyun at those words. The careful diplomat, the calm negotiator, all of it shattered. His voice came out low and dangerous. "They're torturing him to study love. They're hurting an innocent creature to prove humans are weak." He turned to Captain Lee, and the captain saw something in his eyes that he recognized. It was the same look every human got when someone threatened their family. It was the look that had driven humans to fight impossible odds throughout their history. It was pure, focused fury. "Get my dog back," Do-hyun said quietly. "I don't care how." Captain Lee turned to his crew. "All stations battle alert. Marines, prepare for ground insertion. This is no longer a diplomatic mission. We're going to show them what happens when you hurt a human's dog." What followed was something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Humans at war, fighting not for territory or resources or power, but for one of their own. The Indomitable's attack was surgical and brutal at the same time. Captain Lee used every trick in the human military playbook. The Indomitable didn't try to fight the warships directly. Instead, it wove between them, using their size against them, making them afraid to fire for fear of hitting each other. Missiles launched and curved in impossible patterns, forcing the Vryn ships to scatter. While the Indomitable kept the defense fleet busy, Lieutenant Jihun Han led a team of 20 Marines in a stealth insertion craft. They dropped through the atmosphere, invisible to most sensors. The craft landed 2 kilometers from the research facility in the middle of the night. At the same time, Seo-jun, a cyber warfare specialist, launched an attack on the Vryn communication network. Within minutes, defense grids went offline. Security cameras showed false images. Alarms failed to trigger. The Vryn suddenly found themselves blind and deaf. Lieutenant Han's team moved through the darkness with practiced efficiency. They had trained for urban combat on a dozen different worlds. They knew how to move silently, how to neutralize threats without raising alarms. The few Vryn guards they encountered never had a chance to call for help. They reached the research facility and placed breaching charges on a side door. The explosion was controlled just enough to open a path. The team flowed inside, their weapons ready but preferring stealth over combat. Inside the facility, researchers fled in panic. The Marines let them go. They weren't here for revenge against scientists. They had one mission: find Baram and get out. Using the building plans Nari had provided, they navigated through corridors and laboratories. The facility was larger than expected, a maze of rooms and passages. But they kept moving, clearing each section methodically. Finally, in a secured wing on the 3rd floor, they found what they were looking for: a door marked with Vryn symbols that translated to psychological research. Lieutenant Han nodded to his demolitions expert. The lock exploded inward. The room beyond was clinical and cold. Medical equipment lined the walls. In the center, inside a cage far too small, was Baram. The golden retriever looked up as the humans entered. His ribs showed through his fur. His eyes were dull with exhaustion and fear. But when he saw humans, when he heard Lieutenant Han speak in English, something changed. His tail moved slightly, a small, weak wag of recognition. "Hey, buddy." Han knelt beside the cage, his voice gentle. "We're here to take you home. Let's get you out of there." The cage lock was complex, designed to prevent escape, but it wasn't designed to resist a human with a plasma cutter. Within seconds, the door swung open. Han reached in slowly, letting Baram smell his hand. The dog pressed against him, seeking comfort from the first kind touch he had felt in days. One of the Marines removed his jacket and wrapped it around Baram, keeping him warm and secure. "All right, we've got him. Let's move." They turned to leave and found their path blocked. Commander Velcro stood in the doorway, armed with a plasma rifle. Behind him, more Vryn soldiers appeared. The commander's face twisted with contempt. "All this for an animal. Your species is pathetic. We wanted to prove humans were weak, and you've proven us right. You'll start a war over a pet." Lieutenant Han shifted Baram to one of his team members, then stepped forward. His hand rested on his weapon, but he didn't draw it yet. "He's not a pet. He's family. That's something you'll never understand. And no, we're not weak. We're loyal." "There's a difference," Velcros laughed. "You're surrounded. You have no escape." "Drop your weapons." Han smiled coldly. "You really don't know humans at all, do you?" He touched his communicator. "Seo-jun now." Every light in the facility went out. Emergency systems failed. The Vryn soldiers shouted in confusion. Their night vision suddenly useless as electromagnetic pulse weapons scrambled their equipment. In the darkness, the Marines moved. They had trained for exactly this situation. They could fight blind if necessary. When the lights came back on 60 seconds later, Lieutenant Han stood over Velcros. The commander was on the ground, stunned but alive. Han had fired a non-lethal round, following rules of engagement even in enemy territory. "That's another thing you don't understand about humans. We have rules. We have honor. Even when we're angry." He looked down at Velcros with disgust. "You wanted to study human emotions? Here's a lesson. We love deeply. We protect fiercely. And when you hurt what we love, we don't break. We become something you should fear." The team extracted quickly, carrying Baram carefully between them. The dog was weak but aware, his eyes watching the humans who had come for him. Outside, their insertion craft waited. They loaded aboard and lifted off as Vryn security finally organized a response. Pursuit fighters scrambled after them, but the Indomitable was ready. The destroyer swept down through the atmosphere, weapons blazing. The pursuit fighters broke off, recognizing they were outmatched. The insertion craft docked with the Indomitable. As soon as the airlock sealed, Lieutenant Han carried Baram to the medical bay. Do-hyun was already there, having waited in agony during the entire operation. When Baram saw Do-hyun, he struggled to break free. Despite his weakness, despite days of stress and fear, he recognized his human. Han set him down carefully and Baram stumbled forward. Do-hyun dropped to his knees and dog and man met in the middle. Baram pressed against Do-hyun, his tail wagging weakly. He made small whimpering sounds, trying to communicate everything he had experienced. Do-hyun wrapped his arms around his dog, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, boy. You're safe now. You're coming home." Around them, the medical staff stood silently, many with their own tears. They had all grown up with dogs, with pets, with companions. They understood exactly what this moment meant. The ship's doctor stepped forward gently. "Ambassador, let me examine him. We need to make sure he's okay." Do-hyun nodded but didn't let go. He stayed beside Baram while the doctor worked, his hand constantly touching his dog, reassuring him that he was safe. On the bridge, Captain Lee received reports. The Vryn defense fleet was withdrawing. They had seen human determination and decided not to escalate further. The Indomitable and the other human ships began breaking orbit, heading back toward neutral space. Captain Lee activated ship-wide communications. "All hands, mission accomplished. We got him back. Stand down from battle stations. And to everyone who volunteered for this mission, thank you. You proved today what humanity stands for. We don't leave family behind." Throughout the ship, crew members cheered. In the medical bay, Baram's tail wagged a little stronger at the sound. The journey back to Station Covenant 7 took 3 days. During that time, Baram stayed in the medical bay under careful observation. The ship's doctor, a woman named Dr. Sora Lim, treated his physical injuries first. Cuts and bruises healed quickly with modern medicine. The psychological damage would take longer. Do-hyun never left Baram's side except when forced to. He slept on the floor beside the medical bed where Baram rested. He talked to his dog constantly, his voice soft and reassuring. The crew brought them food and water, speaking gently to both human and animal. Slowly, Baram began to recover. His tail wagged more often. He ate with better appetite. The fear in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by the trust that had always been there. Dogs were good at forgiveness, Do-hyun thought. Better than most species, including humans. On the 3rd day, as the Indomitable approached the station, Captain Lee called Do-hyun to the bridge. "Ambassador, you need to see this." The view screen showed dozens of ships surrounding the station, news vessels from across the galaxy, military observers, diplomatic transports. Everyone wanted to witness what would happen next. The Galactic Council had called an emergency tribunal to address the incident. They're demanding answers. Captain Lee's voice was grim. Some species want us sanctioned for unauthorized military action. Others are calling for the Vryn to face consequences. It's chaos. Do-hyun looked at the screen, then down at Baram, who had followed him to the bridge. The dog pressed against his leg, still nervous in unfamiliar spaces. "What do they want from me?" "Your testimony." Ambassador Song sent word. "You're to appear before the council tomorrow. Bring Baram." The council chamber was packed when Do-hyun entered the next day. Representatives from every major species filled the seats. Cameras recorded everything, broadcasting to billions of beings across the galaxy. Do-hyun walked calmly to the speaker's platform, Baram at his side. The dog drew immediate attention. Some species leaned forward with curiosity, others showed disgust. The Vryn delegation sat in stony silence, their faces unreadable. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been exploring space for thousands of years, began the session. "Ambassador Park, you stand accused of unauthorized military action against the Vryn Empire. You entered restricted space, engaged their defense forces, and conducted an armed raid on their territory. How do you respond?" Do-hyun stood silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried clearly through the chamber. "I came to you first. I filed formal complaints. I provided evidence that my companion had been stolen from my quarters. You dismissed it as a minor incident. You told me that an animal wasn't important enough to investigate." He gestured to Baram, who sat patiently beside him. "This is Baram. He's been my companion for 5 years. When I was alone and far from home, he was there. When I worked 20-hour days trying to prove humanity deserved a place among the stars, he was there. When I felt the weight of representing my entire species, he was there. Do-hyun's voice grew stronger. You wanted to study why humans bond with other species. I'll tell you. It's because we understand that intelligence and worth aren't the same thing. Barum can't speak your languages. He can't build ships or solve equations. But he loves without condition. He trusts completely. And that's worth more than all the technology in the galaxy. The chamber was completely silent now. Every being present listened intently. The Vryn took him deliberately. Not for science. Not for research. They took him to hurt me. To prove that human emotions make us weak. And when I came to you for help, for justice, you sided with them because they have military power. So yes, I went and got him back. And I would do it again. Every human would. Because we don't abandon family. Not ever. Ambassador Song stood from the human delegation section. She activated a holographic display. With the Council's permission, I would like to present evidence. The display showed footage from the Vryn research facility. Security cameras had recorded everything. The Council watched as Vryn researchers subjected Barum to stress tests. They saw him confined in 2 small spaces. They saw him deprived of food and water. They saw him exposed to loud noises and bright lights, all while researchers took notes on his reactions. The footage was difficult to watch. Even species who had no concept of companion animals felt uncomfortable. This wasn't scientific research. This was deliberate cruelty. Ambassador Song's voice was cold as she narrated. These recordings were taken over a period of 4 days. The researchers were studying how stress and fear affected human emotional attachment. They wanted to know if humans would abandon companions who had been traumatized. She displayed internal Vryn communications, showing that the operation had been approved at high levels. This was not the action of one commander. This was an official military research project designed to exploit what the Vryn saw as human weakness. The mood in the chamber shifted. Beings who had been ready to condemn humanity now looked uncertain. The Vryn delegation attempted to speak, but the council speaker silenced them with a gesture. You will have your chance to respond, Ambassador Song continued. I have more evidence. She displayed footage from Earth, humans throughout history working with dogs, search and rescue operations where dogs found survivors in rubble, medical facilities where dogs helped patients recover, veterans with post-traumatic stress who had been helped by service animals. This is what the Vryn wanted to study. This is what they thought made us weak. But look at what it actually shows. Humans form bonds that transcend species barriers. We don't just coexist with other intelligent life. We actively seek to understand and connect with all living creatures. A representative from the Kelric species stood. The insectoid being's antennae quivered with emotion. I wish to speak. The council speaker nodded permission. The Kelric ambassador approached the platform. My species understands loyalty to the collective. We have always believed that individual attachment was inefficient. But watching this, seeing how humans respond when their companions are threatened, I understand we were wrong. This is not weakness. This is a form of strength we cannot comprehend. The ambassador knelt slowly beside Barum, moving carefully to avoid frightening him. May I touch him? Do-hyun nodded. Barum, still nervous but trusting his human's judgment, allowed the alien to gently stroke his head. The Kelric's entire body shivered. I feel his fear, but also his trust. He has been hurt, but he still believes in kindness. This is remarkable. Other ambassadors began speaking, some sharing similar observations. A few admitted they had dismissed humans as emotionally unstable. Now they were reconsidering. Perhaps human emotion wasn't a flaw, but an advantage. Finally, the Vryn delegation leader stood. His name was High Commander Krath, an old soldier covered in battle scars. He looked at Do-hyun for a long moment before speaking. Ambassador Park, what Commander Velcros did was dishonorable. He and his team have been removed from service. We owe you and your companion an apology. Do-hyun studied the Vryn commander. Is that sufficient? An apology after torture? High Commander Krath's expression didn't change, but his voice held something that might have been respect. No, it is not. We fundamentally misunderstood your species. We thought we were exploiting weakness. Instead, we learned about a kind of strength our people have never possessed. We will pay reparations. We will establish new protocols for the treatment of companion species, and we will never make this mistake again. He paused. I have read your military history, Ambassador. Humans are terrifying in battle. Not because of your weapons or tactics, but because you fight for each other with absolute commitment. We are grateful this did not escalate to war. I do not think we would have won. The council speaker called for a vote. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was announced. The Vryn Empire would formally apologize and pay reparations to Ambassador Park. New laws would protect companion animals throughout council space. No species could harm or confiscate registered companions without severe consequences, and humanity would face no sanctions for their rescue operation. More importantly, something had changed in how species viewed humans. They were no longer seen as naive newcomers or emotionally unstable children. They were recognized as a species with unique strengths, one that valued loyalty and love as highly as any technology. As the session ended, dozens of ambassadors approached Do-hyun. Some wanted to apologize for their earlier dismissal. Others wanted to learn more about companion animals. A few asked if they could meet Baram properly. Do-hyun allowed it, carefully monitoring Baram's reactions. The dog was still recovering emotionally, but with his human beside him, he showed more confidence. He sniffed alien hands cautiously, accepted gentle touches, and gradually seemed to understand that not all aliens meant harm. The young Kelric ambassador returned with a small creature riding on their shoulder. It looked like a beetle, but moved with obvious intelligence. I have taken your example. This is Shimmer. I'm learning about companionship. Do-hyun smiled genuinely for the first time in days. That's wonderful. Would Baram like to meet Shimmer? He's very gentle with smaller animals. The two companions met carefully, supervised by their respective humans. Baram's tail wagged softly as he sniffed the beetle. The insect clicked its mandibles in what the Kelric explained was curiosity, not threat. For a moment, two completely different species connected through the universal language of gentle interest. That evening, Do-hyun sat in his quarters with Baram curled up beside him on the bed. The dog slept peacefully, occasionally twitching in dreams. The nightmares were less frequent now. With time and patience, they would fade completely. Min-jae stopped by with reports. Ambassador, you should see this. He handed over a tablet showing news from Earth. Millions of people had participated in rallies supporting Baram's law, demanding better protection for companion animals everywhere humans traveled. More significantly, the Galactic Council had officially recognized companion animals as protected individuals. Any registered companion harmed would be treated as assault against their caretaker. Penalties would be severe. Do-hyun read through everything, then looked at Baram. You changed the galaxy, boy. All you did was be yourself. Baram's tail thumped against the bed, and Do-hyun knew that everything they had been through was worth it. 6 months passed since the incident that the galaxy now simply called the Retrieval. Station Covenant 7 had changed in subtle but important ways. The corridors that once saw humans walking alone now saw them accompanied by various creatures. Dogs, cats, even small animals from other human worlds. Other species had begun bringing their own companions too. A new section of the station had opened within weeks of the Council's decision. The Interspecies Companion Center occupied 3 full levels, with facilities for animal care, training programs, and research into cross-species bonding. Nari had left her security position to run the center full-time. She discovered she preferred teaching compassion over investigating crimes. Do-hyun walked through the center with Baram, visiting as he did most mornings before his diplomatic duties began. The golden retriever had recovered fully from his physical injuries. The emotional scars had healed more slowly, but with patience and love, Baram had returned to his old self. He greeted other animals with curiosity now, his tail wagging with genuine happiness. In one of the training rooms, Nari worked with a group of young Kelric learning about proper animal care. The insectoids had proven surprisingly enthusiastic students. Their rigid social structure made them natural caretakers once they understood the responsibility involved. Several already had companions of their own, small creatures from their homeworld that they treated with obvious affection. Ambassador Park, Nari called out when she saw him. Perfect timing. Could Baram help with a demonstration? One of the Kelric students looked nervous around him. Do-hyun smiled and walked over. Baram approached the young Kelric slowly, his movements gentle and non-threatening. The student extended a trembling appendage. Baram sniffed it carefully, then his tail wagged. The Kelric's antennae quivered with what Do-hyun had learned to recognize as delight. He trusts me. The student's voice filled with wonder. Even though I am so different, that's what makes it special. Nari's voice was warm. Companionship crosses all boundaries. Species, language, culture. It's one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Later that morning, Do-hyun attended a council session. The atmosphere had changed dramatically from 6 months ago. Humans were no longer treated as naive newcomers. Ambassador Song had been appointed to the Security Committee, an honor usually reserved for species with centuries of spacefaring history. Other human diplomats held positions on trade councils, scientific committees, and cultural exchange programs. The Vrin delegation had changed too. High Commander Krath attended regularly now, personally overseeing his species' relationship with humanity. He approached Do-hyun during a break in the proceedings. "Ambassador Park, a moment of your time." Do-hyun tensed slightly. Even after 6 months, interacting with Vrin still brought up difficult memories. But he maintained his diplomatic composure. "Commander Krath." The Vrin gestured to a younger member of his delegation. "This is Cultural Liaison Hyolyn. She has requested permission to meet Barum properly. I understand if you refuse." Do-hyun studied the young Vrin. She looked nervous, her scales showing colors that his translation implant identified as respectful uncertainty. "Why do you want to meet him?" Hyolyn stepped forward. "Ambassador, what my people did was unforgivable. I was horrified when I learned the truth. I have been studying human culture, trying to understand. I want to learn about companionship, about kindness, about the things my species has ignored for too long." Do-hyun looked down at Baram. The dog watched the Vrin calmly. Months ago he had been terrified of their species, but trauma could be healed with time and gentle exposure. "What do you think, boy? Want to help teach?" Baram's tail wagged once. Do-hyun took that as permission. "All right, move slowly. Let him come to you. Don't reach for him suddenly." Hyolyn knelt carefully, making herself smaller and less threatening. She extended one clawed hand slowly, palm up. Baram approached cautiously, sniffing the air. He remembered Vrin's scent, remembered fear and pain. But he also trusted his human completely. If Do-hyun said this was safe, it was safe. He sniffed Hyolyn's hand carefully. She remained perfectly still, barely breathing. Then Baram's tail wagged. He allowed her to gently touch his head. Hyolyn's eyes, so different from human eyes, showed what could only be described as wonder. "He forgives." Her voice was barely a whisper. "After what we did, he still trusts. That's what makes dogs special." Do-hyun's voice was soft. "They don't hold grudges. They live in the moment. If you're kind now, past cruelty fades. This is the strength we tried to exploit as weakness." High Commander Krath spoke quietly. "We thought forgiveness meant softness. We were wrong. Forgiveness requires more courage than revenge." In the weeks that followed, more Vrin began attending the Companion Center. They were awkward students at first, their militaristic culture providing no framework for gentle care. But they learned. Slowly, carefully, they began forming bonds with creatures from their own world. Small things at first. Lizard-like animals that basked in warmth. Flying creatures that landed on shoulders. The changes spread beyond the station. Reports came from across the galaxy. Species that had never considered companionship were experimenting with it. Not all succeeded. Some species were simply too different. Their biology or psychology incompatible with the kind of bonding humans demonstrated, but many found their own versions of it. Dr. Young-mi, a human xenobiologist, published research explaining the science behind interspecies bonding. Her papers became required reading in alien universities. She explained how certain neurotransmitters created attachment, how evolution could favor cooperation across species lines, how emotional connections strengthened social structures. But her conclusion resonated most deeply. She wrote that humanity's ability to love across species boundaries wasn't an accident of evolution. It was a feature that made humans uniquely suited for a galactic community. Humans didn't just tolerate differences. They actively sought to connect with them. Military observers noted changes too. After the retrieval, no human vessel had been threatened or harassed by any species. Pirates who once targeted human ships suddenly avoided them entirely. When asked why, one pirate captain who had been captured said simply that humans were too dangerous when motivated. They fought like demons when protecting their own. Captain Lee had become something of a celebrity in military circles. His tactics during the Calros operation were studied in war colleges across multiple species. What fascinated alien strategists most wasn't the technical brilliance but the emotional component. Every human involved had fought with absolute commitment because they understood exactly what they were fighting for. Lee himself downplayed the attention. In a rare interview, he said the real credit belonged to Bahram. A dog reminded the galaxy what really matters, not territory or resources or power. Connection, loyalty, love. Those are the things worth fighting for. One evening, Do-hyun received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Terry Song arrived at his quarters carrying a data tablet. "You need to see something." Her expression was serious but not grim. She displayed a report from Terran intelligence. Since the incident, humanity's diplomatic standing has increased significantly. We have trade agreements we couldn't get before. Security partnerships, cultural exchanges. Species that dismissed us now seek our cooperation. Do-hyun read through the report, surprised by the scope of the changes. This is all because of Bahram? It's because of what Bahram represented. Down, scratching behind the dog's ears. The galaxy saw humans at our most fundamental, not performing diplomacy or demonstrating technology, just being loyal to family, and they realized that's a species they want as allies. She pulled up another file. There's more. The phrase "we don't leave family behind" has entered multiple alien languages. It's used to mean absolute loyalty. And there's talk of establishing an annual Remembrance Day for the retrieval, celebrating the importance of protecting the vulnerable. Do-hyun felt overwhelmed. Bahram, unaware of his impact on galactic politics, simply rolled over for belly rubs. "I just wanted my dog back. I never intended any of this. That's exactly why at Matras are making political statements. You were just being human, and the galaxy needed to see that." A few days later, Do-hyun took Bahram to a park area on the station. It was a new addition, designed specifically for companions to exercise and play. Multiple species brought their animals, creating a diverse collection of creatures that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. Bahram played with other dogs, chased toys, and occasionally greeted alien companions with friendly sniffs. The young Kelric ambassador was there with Shimmer, watching their beetle companion interact with a small furry creature from another world. They waved to Do-hyun. "Ambassador Park, thank you for everything. Shimmer has changed my life. I understand now what I was missing." That evening, Do-hyun sat in his quarters writing a report to Earth. He described the changes on the station, the new relationships forming, the subtle shift in how species interacted. At his feet, Bahram dozed peacefully, occasionally twitching in dreams that were now pleasant. A message arrived from Captain Lee. "Thought you should know. Intel reports that the phrase 'touch our dogs, face our wrath' has become unofficial policy across human space. No government will admit to approving it, but it's understood. Harm a companion, face consequences." Do-hyun smiled at that. Humans had established their repeal. Do-hyun realized something profound. Before the retrieval, humans had been trying to prove they belonged among the stars through intelligence, technology, and diplomatic skill. They had been successful, but always felt like outsiders. Now, by simply being themselves, by showing the depth of their capacity for love and loyalty, they had found their true place. The galaxy had learned what fury meant when you hurt a human's dog, but more importantly, they had learned what love meant to humanity, and that second lesson was far more powerful than the first. That night, Do-hyun sat with Bahram in their quarters. The dog's head rested on his lap, tail occasionally wagging in contentment. Through the viewport, stars glittered endlessly. Somewhere out there, on thousands of worlds, other beings were forming their own bonds with companions, learning about unconditional love, discovering that strength and gentleness weren't opposites. "You changed the galaxy, boy." Do-hyun scratched behind Bahram's ears. "All you did was be yourself and trust me to come for you. And you were right to trust. I'll always come for you." Bahram's tail thumped against the floor, and Do-hyun knew that no matter what challenges the future brought, no matter what conflicts or struggles awaited humanity among the stars, they would face it all with the same simple truth that had guided the retrieval. Love was worth fighting for. Family was worth protecting, and anyone who threatened either would learn exactly what human fury meant. The end.